I am Lisa.
And I'm Eric. Do you want to improve your English easily? If so, you're in the right place.
Okay, today we'll listen to a podcast about a 15-minute daily study plan.
Let's listen to it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Emma.
And I'm Mark. We're here to help you on your English learning journey.
We always advise our listeners that 15 minutes of consistent daily practice can be enough, so we decided to develop a simple 15-minute study plan that anyone can fit into their day.
This plan includes speaking, listening, and reading, making it perfect for those who want to practice them all at the same time. Just 15 minutes. We'll break it down into small, manageable steps that will help you see real results.
Okay, let's start with step 1. 3-minute vocabulary warm-up. The idea here is not to learn dozens of new words every day. Instead, focus on just a few words, maybe 4 or 5, and really learn them well.
Exactly. Quality over quantity. There are a few ways to do this. First, write the word down. The act of writing helps your brain remember.
Yes. Then, say the word out loud several times. Get used to how it sounds and how it feels in your mouth.
And most importantly, use the word in a sentence. This is where you make the word your own. Don't just memorize the definition. Understand how to use it in context.
For example, let's say our word today is nail down. It is a phrasal verb. It means to make something certain or final.
Right. So, a sentence could be, I need to nail down the details of the meeting before tomorrow. See? It's not just about knowing the definition. It's about using it naturally.
There are some great tools on the internet to help you with this. You can also find lots of useful word lists online, organized by topic or level.
The important thing is to find a method that you enjoy and that works for you. 3 minutes, a few words, and you're off to a great start.
All right, now it's time for step 2, listening practice. We're going to spend 4 minutes on this.
Listening is so important. It's how you improve your pronunciation, your understanding of natural speech, and your overall comprehension.
And it doesn't have to be boring. You can listen to podcasts like this one, of course.
Absolutely. You can also listen to English songs and watch short videos on YouTube. The key is to choose something that you enjoy. If you're interested in the content, you'll be more motivated to listen and learn.
Now, a common mistake is trying to understand every single word. Don't do that. It's frustrating, and it's not how we naturally listen to our native language.
That's right. Try to get the main idea of what's being said, even if you don't understand every word. This is related to something called the comprehensible input hypothesis, developed by linguist Stephen Krashen.
It sounds complicated, but the basic idea is simple. We learn a language best when we understand the message, even if we don't know all the words.
Exactly. It's like when you're a child learning your first language. You don't understand everything, but you gradually pick up the meaning from context.
So, don't worry if you don't catch every word. Focus on the overall meaning, and gradually your understanding will improve. Choose materials that are at the right level for you, not too easy, but not too difficult. This is your comprehensible input.
Now it's time for speaking practice. You'll spend 4 minutes on this. And we know what you're thinking. You'll say, but I don't have anyone to speak English with.
That's a common problem, but it's not an excuse. One simple way is to just talk about your day. What did you do today? What did you eat? What are your plans for tomorrow? Just narrate your life in English by yourself.
Another great technique is to ask yourself simple questions and answer them out loud. What's my favorite color? What did I do last weekend? What's the weather like today?
It might feel silly at first, but it's incredibly effective. You're getting your mouth used to forming English words and sentences.
Absolutely. And here's a tip that might surprise you. Record yourself speaking. Use your phone or your computer to record yourself answering questions or talking about a topic.
Then, listen back to the recording. This is the most important part. You'll notice some mistakes that you might not have realized before.
You might hear yourself making certain mistakes repeatedly, or you might notice that you're hesitating a lot in certain places. This is incredibly valuable feedback.
It helps you identify your weaknesses and focus on improving them. Studies have shown that self-recording can significantly improve fluency and confidence in language learners.
It's like having your own personal English tutor. You're becoming more aware of your own speech, and that awareness is the first step to improvement. Record yourself, listen back, and learn from it.
We're moving quickly. Now it's time for step 4. Reading practice. Just 2 minutes for this one. Even a short amount of reading can make a big difference.
2 minutes might not seem like much, but it's enough to expose you to new vocabulary and sentence structures and to reinforce what you've already learned.
And again, choose something you enjoy. It could be a short story, a news article, a blog post, or even a few pages from a book you're reading.
The key here is not to get bogged down in unfamiliar words. If you encounter a word you don't know, try to guess its meaning from the context.
If you can't guess, don't stop and look it up immediately. Just keep reading. You can always go back and look it up later. The goal is to keep the flow going and enjoy the reading experience.
And finally, step 5, reflection. This is a crucial step that many people skip, but it's essential for long-term learning. We'll spend 2 minutes on this.
This is your time to review what you've learned during your 15-minute study session. Go back to the new words you learned and use them in new sentences.
Think about the listening practice you did in step 2. What did you understand? What was challenging? And think about the reading you did in step 4. What new words or phrases did you encounter?
This reflection process helps your brain consolidate what you've learned. It moves information from your short-term memory to your long-term memory.
A great way to make learning stick is to make it personal. Connect what you're learning to your own life, your own experiences, and your own interests.
For example, if you learned the word ambitious, think about your own ambitions. What are your goals? How can you use the word ambitious to describe yourself or your plans?
This personal connection makes the learning more meaningful and memorable.
So, there you have it. A simple 15-minute English study plan that anyone can fit into their day.
So, we've covered vocabulary building, listening practice, speaking practice, reading practice, and reflection.
The key is consistency. Even 15 minutes a day, every day, will make a huge difference over time.
Don't get discouraged if you miss a day here or there. Just get back on track the next day.
See you next time for another helpful episode.
Take care and keep studying.
What do you think about the podcast, Eric?
It's been a really useful podcast, and we finally gave our followers the 15-minute daily study plan that we've been talking about for a long time.
Yes, in the next videos, we're going to do a podcast with a 15-minute speaking study plan for just speaking, and one for each of the others.
That's great. I hope our followers will take advantage of the study plans.
I hope so, Eric. Okay, let's start our podcast. What are the words today, Eric?
The first word today is essential. Then we will continue with to be aware of and to encounter, then to bog down. And the final one is nail down.
Let's start with the first word.
The first word is essential.
Essential.
Essential is an adjective you'll hear a lot in English. It means something is very important or necessary. If something is essential, you must have it or must do it.
Yes. For example, water is essential for life. Without water, we cannot survive.
Exactly. Let's look at another example. Your passport is essential, especially if you're traveling to another country.
That's a great example. So, essential is a strong word. It's not just nice to have. It's something you really need. Is essential formal, Eric?
Essential is a little more formal than important, but you can use it in everyday conversation too. For example, at work, your boss might say, good communication is essential for teamwork.
That's true. But if you're chatting with friends, you might just say, "It's really important."
Great point, Lisa. Now, let's do a quick quiz for our listeners. I'll say a sentence, and you decide if essential is the right word. Ready?
Let's do it.
Sentence 1. A warm coat is essential in winter. Does that make sense?
Yes. In cold weather, a warm coat is something you really need.
Good job. Sentence 2. Watching TV is essential for learning English.
No, not really. Watching TV can help, but it's not something you must do. There are many ways to learn English.
That's right. Great work, Lisa.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, well, I think now our listeners understand the word essential better. Shall we move on to the next word?
Let's do it. The next word is be aware of.
Be aware of.
To be aware of means to know about something or to understand something is happening. When you are aware of something, you notice it or think about it.
Yes. If you are aware of something, you understand that it exists or that it is important. For example, be aware of the traffic when crossing the street. That means you should pay attention to cars and stay safe.
Exactly. Let's look at another example. You should be aware of the rules before taking an exam. That means you need to know and understand the rules first. And here's a grammar tip. We use be aware of followed by a noun or a noun phrase like be aware of danger or be aware of changes.
And we also use be aware that when introducing a full sentence. For example, be aware that the weather might change suddenly.
Perfect. Now, let's talk about formality. Be aware of is common in both formal and everyday situations. A teacher might say, be aware of the deadlines for your assignments.
Okay, now let's do a quick quiz for our listeners. You'll say a sentence, and I decide if be aware of is the right phrase. Ready, Eric?
Yes, I'm ready. Sentence 1. You should be aware of scams when shopping online. Does that make sense?
Yes. Online scams are something you should know about and be careful of.
Good job. Sentence 2. I am be aware of my favorite song on the radio.
No, that doesn't sound right. We don't usually use be aware of for personal preferences. You could say, I know my favorite song is on the radio.
Correct, Lisa. Good job.
Thanks, Eric. Okay, that's it for the word be aware of. Let's move on to the next word.
The next word is to encounter.
To encounter.
Encounter is a verb that means to meet or experience something, often unexpectedly.
So if I say, I encountered an old friend at the supermarket, that means I met my friend by surprise, right?
Exactly. You weren't planning to meet them, it just happened.
Great. But encounter isn't just about meeting people, right?
That's right. We also use encounter when we face problems or difficulties. For example, she encountered many challenges when she moved to a new country.
Oh, so here, encounter means to experience problems. But is encounter formal in all situations?
Good question. When we talk about meeting people, encounter is quite formal. We usually just say meet in everyday English.
So instead of I encountered Jack at the coffee shop, I should say I ran into Jack at the coffee shop?
Yes, that sounds more natural in conversation.
Got it. But for problems, encounter is common, right, Eric?
Yes, it's often used in news, work, and academic writing. For example, scientists encountered difficulties during the experiment.
So, if I say I encountered my cousin at a wedding last weekend,
Here, met or run into is better because it's an informal meeting.
nice. I think our listeners understand encounter now. Let's move on to the next word.
The next word is bog down.
Bog down.
Bog down is a phrasal verb that means to slow down or get stuck because of too many problems or too much work.
Oh, so if something bogs you down, it makes progress difficult?
Exactly. For example, I got bogged down with paperwork at the office. That means I had so much work that I couldn't finish quickly.
I see. It's like saying you're stuck in one place because there's too much to do.
Yes. And did you know that bog is actually a type of wet, muddy ground?
Oh, so if you walk in a bog, you get stuck. Just like with too much work.
Yes, Lisa, you can also use bog down for situations, not just people. For example, the project was bogged down by delays.
That means the project couldn't move forward because of problems.
Right, but this phrase is usually informal. You wouldn't use it in very formal writing, and we often use it in negative situations. For example, don't let small problems bog you down. Just keep going.
Good to know. What would you say about this sentence, Eric? I couldn't finish my homework because I got bogged down with chores.
It's a perfect sentence. Because of too many chores, you couldn't finish your homework.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, well, we've reached the last word today. What is the last word, Eric?
The last word is nail down.
Nail down.
Nail down is a phrasal verb that means to confirm or finalize something, especially when making decisions or plans.
Oh, so if I say, we need to nail down the date for our trip, that means we need to decide and confirm the date?
Exactly. You're trying to finalize the plan.
That makes sense. But where does this phrase come from?
Good question. It comes from hammering a nail into wood. Once you nail something down, it stays in place. It won't move.
Oh, so when we nail down a plan, we make sure it won't change.
Exactly. Here's another example. The company is trying to nail down the budget for next year. That means they are trying to make the budget definite in the final numbers.
Got it. Can we also use it for ideas?
Yes. You can say, I'm trying to nail down my main idea for the essay. That means you're working to make your idea clear and certain.
Great. Okay, let me give you some example sentences. We need to nail down the time for our meeting before sending invitations.
Good example.
Example 2. I'm having trouble nailing down my research topic.
Perfect, Lisa.
Got it. Okay. Well, that's it for today's episode of Simply Explained English. We hope you found the words helpful and the explanations easy to understand.
Thanks for listening. Keep studying your English.
And stay tuned. Bye for now. I am Lisa.
And I'm Eric. Do you want to improve your English easily? If so, you're in the right place.
Okay. Today we'll listen to a podcast about a 15-minute daily speaking study plan.
Let's listen to it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our podcast, 15-Minute English Speaking Practice. I'm Mark.
And I'm Emma. Thank you for joining us today. In this podcast, we will share a simple daily routine to help you improve your English speaking skills in just 15 minutes a day.
That's right. We will talk about a warm-up, choosing a topic, speaking practice, and how to check your progress steps. Our goal is to help you feel more confident and fluent in English.
We want to help you nail down a routine that works for you. Let's get started. So, why is daily practice so important? Well, it's all about building a habit. When you practice a little bit every day, it becomes easier and easier. It's like learning to ride a bike. At first, it's hard, but after a while, you don't even have to think about it.
Exactly. And a short 15-minute session can really help you feel less afraid of speaking.
Plus, regular practice helps your brain remember words and phrases better. When you need to speak, you'll be able to recall them more quickly.
I remember when I started learning Spanish, I was so shy about speaking. But I made a promise to myself to speak for at least 10 minutes every day, even if it was just to myself. After a few weeks, I felt much more comfortable talking to native speakers. All right, let's break down our 15-minute routine step by step. First, we have the warm-up. This part takes 2 minutes. Emma, can you explain this part?
Sure, Mark. During the warm-up, we quickly activate our brains for English. You can say a few vocabulary words or simple phrases that you have learned recently. It's like stretching your muscles before exercise. Just speak slowly and clearly. This helps you get ready to speak for the rest of the practice.
Exactly. The idea is to get your mouth moving and your brain thinking in English. Choose a topic you're interested in, like hobbies, travel, or something in the news.
Then, write down 3 or 4 keywords or short phrases related to that topic. For example, if your topic is travel, you might write down beach, passport, adventure, and delicious food.
Try to choose a different topic each day to keep things interesting and cover a wide range of everyday conversations.
Right. Having a few keywords in mind makes it easier to talk. It gives you a small plan to follow. After the preparation, we move to the main part, intensive speaking practice. This part lasts 7 minutes, and it is the most important part of the routine.
Right. Having a few keywords in mind makes it easier to talk. It gives you a small plan to follow. After the preparation, we move to the main part, intensive speaking practice. This part lasts 7 minutes, and it is the most important part of the routine.
For the intensive speaking practice, try to speak continuously about your topic. You can break these 7 minutes into small parts. For example, speak for 1 minute, take a short pause, then speak for another minute. This helps you to keep the conversation flowing and gives you time to think.
That's a good idea, Emma. The goal is to speak as much as you can without stopping. You can also record your practice. Later, listen to the recording to see where you can improve. Recording yourself is a great way to notice mistakes and track your progress.
Yes, and while speaking, try to use simple sentences. Use words you know well. And do not worry about being perfect. The more you practice, the more you will nail down your speaking skills. Over time, you will become more confident and fluent.
Also, it is helpful to use transition words like first, then, and finally, or use other words like however, therefore, or in addition to connect your ideas smoothly. These words make your speech sound more natural. If you get stuck, you can say, "Let me think," and then carry on.
Don't worry about pausing for a moment to think. It's perfectly normal. What's important is that you keep practicing.
Try to use different sentence structures and vocabulary to challenge yourself.
If you're practicing alone, imagine you're talking to someone. This can help you keep the conversation going.
Remember, it's okay to make mistakes. Don't be too hard on yourself. The point is to build momentum and get comfortable speaking. Even if you hesitate sometimes, the practice will add up and you'll see improvement over time.
Finally, we have reflection and feedback. This is where you think about how you did and what you can improve. If you recorded yourself, listen to it and take notes on any mistakes you made, awkward pauses, or pronunciation issues.
You could also keep a journal to track your progress each day. Write down what you did well and what you need to work on. Be kind to yourself. Acknowledge what you did well, and then focus on the areas where you can improve.
Set small goals for your next practice session, like mastering a difficult phrase or using a new expression confidently. Remember, reviewing your performance and thinking about how you can improve is a really important part of learning.
So, that's the 15-minute routine. Each part works together to help you become more fluent and confident in English.
Now that you know the routine, here are a few extra tips to help you get even more out of it. Try to use new vocabulary words in your everyday conversations. The more you use them, the easier they'll become.
Remember, even a little bit of practice every day can make a big difference. Don't get discouraged if you don't see results right away. Just keep going and you'll get there.
As they say, practice makes perfect. Every day you practice, you're getting closer to fluency.
Track your progress and celebrate your small wins. Did you use a new word correctly? Did you speak more fluently than yesterday? These are all things to be proud of. So, to recap, we've talked about the benefits of daily practice and shared a simple 15-minute routine that includes a warm-up, topic preparation, intensive speaking, and reflection. We also gave you some extra tips to help you stay motivated.
We encourage you to try this routine for at least a week and see how much you improve. We think you'll be surprised.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. We hope you found this episode helpful.
If you have any questions or feedback, please let us know, and stay tuned for our next episode.
Keep practicing, and we'll see you next time.
What do you think about the podcast, Eric?
I loved their idea of a short daily routine. It feels doable and motivating.
Right. Then you focus on speaking for 7 minutes straight, even if you make mistakes. Recording yourself helps too.
Yes, plus the reflection part is brilliant. Listening to your recording, noting mistakes, and celebrating small wins.
Definitely true. All right, let's start our podcast. What are the words today, Eric?
The first word today is intensive. Then we will continue with discouraged and to hesitate. Then to acknowledge. And the final one is carry on.
Let's start with the first word.
The first word is intensive.
Intensive.
Intensive is an adjective that describes something requiring a lot of effort, energy, or focus in a short time. It's used when something is done with great force or concentration.
So, if we say an intensive course, does that mean a course where you study a lot in a short time?
Exactly. An intensive English course might involve 5 hours of study per day instead of just 1.
That makes sense. Can intensive be used for other things too?
Absolutely. For example, in sports, athletes do intensive training before a big competition, meaning they train very hard in a short period.
Oh, I see. What about work? Can someone have intensive work?
Yes, but we usually say intensive work periods. For example, we had an intensive 2-day project to finish the report. It means working very hard in a short time.
That's helpful. And I've heard of intensive care in hospitals. What does that mean, Eric?
Great example. Intensive care is a special hospital section for very sick patients who need constant medical attention.
Oh, I see. And Eric, is intensive a formal word or can we use it in everyday conversation?
Intensive is a neutral word, meaning you can use it in both formal and informal situations. For example, in a business setting, you might say, "We had an intensive meeting to finalize the project." In everyday conversation, you could say, "I'm taking an intensive driving course this week."
That's good to know. Okay, well, I think we've explained intensive pretty well. Let's move on to the next word.
The next word is discouraged.
Discouraged.
Discouraged is an adjective that describes the feeling of losing confidence, motivation, or hope. When you feel discouraged, you don't want to continue something because it seems too difficult or impossible.
Oh, I see. So if I study hard for a test but still get a bad grade, I might feel discouraged?
Exactly. You might feel like giving up, but don't worry. Mistakes help us learn.
That's true. Can we use discouraged in different situations?
Yes, you can feel discouraged in many areas of life. For example, if you apply for a job and don't get it, you might feel discouraged about finding work.
Or if someone trains for a marathon but gets injured, they might feel discouraged because they can't run.
Right, Lisa, it's correct.
Is discouraged a formal word? Or can we use it in daily conversation, Eric?
Discouraged is neutral, so you can use it in both formal and informal situations. For example, in a workplace, someone might say, "After several failed attempts, the team felt discouraged." In a casual setting, you could say, "I felt discouraged after losing the game."
but how do we use discouraged in a sentence grammatically?
Great point. Discouraged is often used with the verb feel, as in I feel discouraged. It is also commonly followed by the preposition about or from when explaining why. For example, she felt discouraged about her progress, or he was discouraged from applying again.
Okay, that's it for the word discouraged. Let's move on to the next word.
The next word is hesitate.
Hesitate.
Hesitate is a verb that means to pause or stop for a moment before doing something, usually because you feel unsure or nervous.
So if I want to answer a question, but I'm not sure if my answer is right, I might hesitate before speaking?
Exactly. You might pause for a second because you're unsure. For example, if someone offers you a job and you're not sure if you want to take it, you might hesitate before accepting.
Or if I'm about to jump into a cold swimming pool, I might hesitate before going in.
Right. It's a natural reaction when we feel uncertain or need time to think.
That's really helpful. Is hesitate a formal word, Eric?
Hesitate is neutral, so you can use it in both formal and informal situations. In a business setting, you might hear, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. In a casual conversation, you might say, I hesitated before trying sushi for the first time.
Oh, so if I'm nervous about asking for help, I can say, I hesitate to ask questions sometimes.
Exactly. And in negative sentences, we often use don't hesitate, like don't hesitate to call if you need help.
That's so useful. So, to summarize, hesitate means to pause because you feel unsure or nervous.
Exactly, Lisa.
Okay, well, shall we move on to the next word?
Let's do that. The next word is acknowledge.
Acknowledge.
Acknowledge means to accept, recognize, or admit that something is true or exists.
Oh, I see. So if I make a mistake and say, I acknowledge that I was wrong, it means I admit my mistake?
Exactly. When you acknowledge something, you accept it as a fact. For example, Emma acknowledged her friend's help by saying thank you. This means Emma recognized that her friend helped her and showed appreciation. And sometimes people acknowledge difficult truths. For example, she acknowledged that learning a new language takes time.
That's really helpful. Is acknowledge a formal word, Eric?
Acknowledge is more common in formal or professional situations. In casual speech, we might say admit instead, like, I admit I was wrong. But in business or official settings, we use acknowledge. For example, the company acknowledged the customer's complaint.
Got it. And how do we use acknowledge in a sentence grammatically?
Acknowledge is a verb, so it's often followed by a noun, a that clause, or a gerund that means ing. For example, I acknowledge your effort. He acknowledged that he was late. Or she acknowledged making a mistake. Or she acknowledged having been at fault.
So if someone thanks me, I can say, I acknowledge your kindness.
Exactly. Let me give one more example. Jack nodded to acknowledge his teacher's question. This means Jack showed that he understood by nodding his head.
Okay, well, I think now our listeners understand the word acknowledge better. Now, let's move on to our last word.
The last word is carry on.
Carry on.
Carry on is a phrasal verb that means to continue doing something, especially after an interruption or difficulty.
I see. So if I'm talking to a friend and someone interrupts us, I might say, let's carry on our conversation.
Exactly. You're telling your friend to continue talking. Or if you face difficulties in life, you might hear advice like, stay strong and carry on.
Oh, so it can also mean to keep going despite challenges.
Right. Another common use is when flight attendants tell passengers, please carry on with boarding. It means continue boarding.
That's really useful. Is carry on a formal phrase or is it more casual, Eric?
Carry on is neutral, so you can use it in both formal and informal situations. In everyday conversation, you might say, I'll carry on with my work. In a business setting, you might hear, despite the difficulties, the company will carry on with its plans.
Got it. And how do we use carry on in a sentence grammatically?
Great point. Carry on is often followed by a noun or a gerund, ing form. For example, he carried on his studies, or she carried on working despite the challenges.
So if I want to say that I continued learning, I could say, I carried on studying English.
Exactly. And in negative form, we say, don't carry on like that, which means don't continue behaving that way.
Okay, well, that's it for today's episode of Simply Explained English. We hope you found the words helpful and the explanations easy to understand.
Thanks for listening. Keep studying your English.
And stay tuned. Bye for now.